To my mother. If you ever doubt what love makes possible, remember this. I am only alive because I knew you were waiting for me. There was a moment I should have died, but the thought of you wouldn't let me. I don't remember the first claw. I remember the silence before it. The kind of silence that doesn't belong in a living forest. That night, the mountain wrapped around me like a grave, and I woke up with death breathing inches from my face. I was alone, but I wasn't empty. You were with me. Somehow that mattered more than fear. People will say I was lucky, but I wasn't saved by luck. I was saved by something I can't explain. A thread between me and the people I love. It held, even as the teeth came down, even as the night forgot my name. I left Salt Lake that Friday afternoon chasing cold and quiet. It had been a brutal week. Deadlines, city noise, messages I didn't want to answer. I packed light. My tent, a sleeping bag rated for 20 degrees, freeze-dried meals, and a little book of Thoreau I never read. I drove toward Mount Nebo and took the turnoff onto a dirt road with no markers. I wanted space, the kind you can only get where your phone dies. The sky was burning gold behind the pines. I passed a sign I barely noticed. Cougar activity reported. Camp at your own risk. I parked by the end of the trail and hiked a couple of miles off route, down into a draw between two ridge lines. The spot felt right, shielded from wind, dry, with plenty of wood around. It was late October, and the aspens were bleeding yellow against the blue. I pitched the tent just before dark and gathered branches for a fire I wouldn't end up lighting. There was something beautiful about the cold, crisp, clean, quiet. It felt honest out there, more honest than the world I came from. As I unpacked, I found myself humming, some tune from a childhood cartoon. That's how relaxed I was. I moved slow, made some tea, and ate a dry protein bar without even noticing how stale it was. The forest was oddly still. Not quiet like pause. I remember thinking, it's too quiet, but brushing it off. I didn't see the tracks then. Not yet. But something had seen me. I climbed a slope above camp just to stretch my legs. Up there, the air felt thinner. The sunset broke across the canyon like spilled wine, purple, gold, red. I took a few photos, smiled at nothing, stayed too long. By the time I made it back to the tent, the light was almost gone. I felt something then, a kind of static in my blood, like the woods were holding their breath. But again, I ignored it. I was tired, and the cold was starting to bite. When I slipped into my sleeping bag that night, I didn't even bother to zip the tent fully. I told myself it was for airflow, but the truth is I never imagined I'd need protection. I was deep enough, far enough, alone enough. Nothing ever happened on these trips. That's why I took them, because nothing happened. The silence helped me breathe, but this time the silence wasn't empty. It was waiting. Somewhere in the early hours, I woke to a sound I couldn't place. Not a branch snapping, not wind. It was soft, repetitive, like breathing, but deeper. I lifted my head and listened. It stopped. I figured it was in my dream and lay back down. My heartbeat had sped up, but I told myself it was just nerves. Maybe too much caffeine. Maybe too much stillness. I pulled the sleeping bag tighter and closed my eyes. The cold returned stronger than before, a creeping, living cold. I thought it was just the mountain air finding its way inside the tent, but then I noticed something else. The smell. It wasn't smoke or sweat or pine. It was wild, metallic, like blood and earth mixed together. I sat up, suddenly wide awake. That's when I noticed the flap of the tent had shifted, just an inch, just enough. I reached for my flashlight, but something inside me told me not to turn it on. Not yet. I waited. I listened. That breathing sound again, closer now, but not fast, slow, calm. That's what scared me most. It wasn't frantic. It was deliberate. I leaned forward, barely moving, and peered toward the tent opening. Nothing. Just blackness. But it was a blackness that moved, like shadow with weight. Then I saw them, two pale shapes reflecting back at me, eyes, low to the ground, unblinking. Not deer eyes, not raccoon, They were wide-set, steady, golden, watching me, not curious, certain. The space between my heartbeat and my breath stretched into something new, something I'd never felt before. Not fear, not yet, but recognition. Something was out there, something that had already made a choice. My hand moved slowly toward the zipper. I didn't know what I planned to do. Open it? My body was acting on instinct, and even that wasn't fast enough. The tent shifted. Not from wind, from weight. Something had touched it from the outside. Light. Testing. Then again. Stronger. A claw, maybe. Or a paw. Right above my head. I held still, breath locked in my throat. I didn't know if I was inside the tent anymore, or inside a trap. Then, silence. Absolute. Crushing. The kind of silence that means something terrible is 1 second away. And that's when I heard it move. It came through the tent like smoke through a slit, silent, sudden, real. One moment I was lying there, barely breathing. The next, the fabric tore open and a wave of muscle and fur landed on top of me. No growl, no roar. Just the unbelievable weight. I didn't even scream. My voice left me. My mind shattered into pieces. Its body pressed against mine, and I could feel the heat of it and the tremble in its limbs. Not fear, power. It pinned my chest, and I finally saw its face. Beautiful, terrifying, pure instinct. Its eyes locked onto mine. Not wild, not mad. Focused. It knew exactly what it was doing. My left hand was trapped under me, my right stretched useless at my side. I could feel the breath of it on my cheek, wet, warm, heavy. It sniffed me once, just once. Then the paw rose, slow as death, and I saw the claws, black, curved, longer than I expected. I tried to turn away. That's when it hit. The first swipe caught my forehead and split skin like paper. Blood poured down my temple instantly. I gasped, not from pain, from how fast it happened. I think I said, "Please." I'm not sure. My voice cracked under the pressure in my chest. I tried to twist my body, but the cougar shifted, pinning me again, one paw now pressing into my shoulder. The weight drove air from my lungs. It didn't bite. Not yet. It studied me like a puzzle. I felt something warm on my stomach. Urine. I had lost control. My body had betrayed me. A piece of me started to drift. That voice that says, "You're dying now. This is how it ends." But then I heard another sound. Outside the tent. Distant. Movement. Branches. The cougar froze. Its ears flicked toward the sound. That's when I took my only chance. My right hand darted out, grabbing a piece of metal, my camp stove. I don't even remember reaching for it. It was pure reflex. I swung it upward into the cat's face. It wasn't a strong hit, but it was enough. The animal recoiled, hissing, half lunging off me. I scrambled backward, bleeding, gasping, half blind from the blood in my eyes. The tent collapsed around us, trapping us both in nylon and chaos. There was no time to think. I kicked and screamed and punched blindly, the stove still in my hand. One hit connected. Hard. I felt bone give. The cougar shrieked, not a roar, but a terrible primal sound that made every hair on my body stand up. It lunged again, this time catching my thigh. The teeth sank in. White-hot pain shot up my leg, then down into my gut. I screamed. This time, I did scream. Loud and long and raw. Not for help. Just to stay conscious. It dragged me 2 feet, maybe more, trying to pull me out of the tent. The fabric tangled around us, flapping like a broken parachute. I grabbed a tent pole, jabbed it toward the cat's face. It snapped it in half with one swipe. I saw its mouth open, pink and black and soaked with my blood. I could smell myself in its breath. My world tunneled. I thought of my mom. I thought of her hands, her voice. Not a memory, a command. Live. That thought gave me one more surge. I kicked with my free leg again and again, heel to ribs, to face, to anything. One kick landed hard. The cougar let go. For a second. That's all I had. I crawled backward out of the tent, screaming, dragging my left leg behind me. Blood soaked the snow. I didn't look back. I couldn't. My lungs burned. My hand slipped on the frozen earth. Then I heard it again. A growl this time. Closer. Behind me. No footsteps. Just breath. Right behind my neck. Then it leapt. I felt the shadow before I felt the impact. But something changed. The animal didn't land square. It hit half off, slipped, stumbled. I rolled sideways, fast as I could. Pain screamed through every nerve, but I kept rolling. I rolled down the slope, over rocks, over roots, until I hit a log and stopped. Silence, then a snarl from above. I couldn't see it, but I knew it was there, watching, choosing. I grabbed a rock and held it like a weapon I didn't believe in. And then, nothing. No footsteps, no sound. The growl faded. I waited. 10 seconds. 20. A minute. I forced myself to sit up. My leg was shredded. My face was pouring blood. I couldn't hear out of one ear. But I was alive. Somehow. I looked up at the ridge. Nothing. No shadow. No eyes. Just trees and wind. And snow stained red around me. I had survived the attack. But something told me it wasn't over. I stayed there for hours, too afraid to move. Blood crusted on my hands. My breath came in short bursts. And then, just as the sun began to rise, I saw it, at the edge of the trees. A silhouette. Sitting. Watching. Still. The next thing I remember clearly is the rattle of a zipper. Not mine, someone else's. Then a voice. Sharp. Urgent. Full of disbelief. A hiker had found me at dawn, half-conscious, wrapped in a collapsed tent stained with blood. I was too weak to speak, barely able to nod. My eyes kept drifting to the trees behind him. I thought I saw it again, those golden eyes. But it could have been the blood loss. I blacked out in the snow with my hand still clutched around a rock. When I came to, I was in a helicopter. Cold air, bright light. Faces I didn't know shouting things I couldn't understand. The ER was a blur of pain and questions. They cut my pants away. I remember that detail too clearly. The gashes in my thigh were deep and curved. 4 clean lines like someone had raked a garden tool through muscle. My scalp had been opened just above the brow. 23 stitches. My shoulder had bruised nearly to the bone. They kept asking about rabies, about the species, the time of attack. I couldn't answer anything. I just kept whispering. It was still there. Nobody really believed me. They smiled the way people smile when they think you're still in shock. For the first week, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt the breath of it again. Hot on my face, slow and steady. I'd jerk awake with my hands clenched and my chest soaked in sweat. My mom stayed with me. She never left the hospital room, not once. She brought a little speaker and played ocean sounds at night, trying to drown out the mountain in my head. But nothing worked. The silence I once loved had turned against me. Every quiet moment now was a memory waiting to pounce. The physical wounds started to heal. My leg, though torn, avoided nerve damage. My face would scar, but nothing disfiguring. The doctors called it a miracle. But I didn't feel lucky. I felt hollow. Like the cougar had taken something from me I couldn't name. I flinched at sudden movements. I kept locking the windows. Even when I was back in the city, I swore I heard twigs snapping at night. My therapist told me it was trauma. My body was still in the forest, even if my mind had come home. I wasn't so sure. One night, 3 weeks after the attack, I had a dream. I was back in the tent, but this time I wasn't scared. The cougar lay beside me, breathing slowly, its head resting on my chest. In the dream, I reached up and touched its fur. It felt warm, real, like it belonged there. I woke up crying, not from fear, from something else. Grief. I missed the version of myself who felt safe in the woods. I missed not knowing what it was like to be prey. I started reading everything I could about cougars. Their habits, behavior, why they attack, how often. Turns out they usually don't. Most attacks are defensive young males, starving, territorial. But what stayed with me most was this. When cougars kill, they kill clean. They go for the neck, fast, efficient. Mine didn't. It studied me, tested me, chose not to finish it. That haunted me more than the attack itself. Why did it let me live? Why was I spared? A ranger visited me after the story made the local news. He brought photos of prints found near the site. He confirmed the cat had stayed near my camp for hours after the incident. He didn't say it directly, but I could tell. They were watching to see if it would come back. Predators sometimes return to unfinished kills. That word, unfinished, echoed through me. I wasn't just attacked, I was claimed. Marked. But never taken. That feeling didn't leave. 2 months later, I went back. Not to the exact spot. I couldn't. But close. I needed to see the woods again. To feel them. I told no one. I brought no tent. Just a knife, a flashlight, and a journal. I didn't stay the night, but I walked until sunset. Every snap of a twig made me freeze. Every shadow made me hold my breath. But something else happened too. I started listening again. Not for danger, but for truth. The forest wasn't trying to hurt me. It never was. That night, back at the motel, I found claw marks on the side of my car. Faint, almost invisible. But they were there. 4 lines, angled down, near the wheel well. I ran my fingers over them and my chest tightened. Not fear, not exactly. A kind of recognition. It wasn't a threat. It felt more like a message. You're still being watched. That should have terrified me. But it didn't. It grounded me. I was part of the food chain now. I went back to therapy. I told her about the claw marks, about the dream, about the question that wouldn't leave me. She asked what answer I wanted. I said, I don't think I want an answer. I think I just want to know it meant something. She nodded, and for the first time I didn't feel alone in it. The cougar didn't just break into my tent that night. It broke into my life. And somehow I needed that. Not the wounds. The truth. Life split in 2 after the attack. Before, I was a man who walked alone into the woods without fear, who trusted silence like an old friend. After, I became someone who jumped at the sound of a pine cone falling, who studied shadows before stepping forward. But in time, I stopped calling it fear. It became something else. Awareness. I no longer saw nature as background. It was alive, watching, listening, and so was I. I started hiking again, slower, softer, less for escape and more for connection. I wasn't trying to forget what happened. I was trying to remember it clearly. I turned my experience into stories. I started speaking to survival groups, wilderness guides, even high school students. Not about the attack, not just that. About what it gave me. The sense that life isn't guaranteed, and that love, real love, is what you hold on to when teeth are at your throat. I told them that every time I thought I'd die, I saw a face. My mother, my brother, a friend I hadn't called in years. And I told them the truth. I think that's what kept me alive. Not instinct, not luck. Love. Pure and simple. One day, a wildlife photographer who'd heard my story reached out. He was tracking a female cougar in the same region. Said she was unusually bold, often approaching campsites but never attacking. Said she watched people, followed them, not to kill, to know them. His words echoed mine. We met, hiked a stretch of the Nebo wilderness. He showed me fresh tracks. I froze when I saw them. Same spacing, same size. I didn't know if it was her, but my chest said yes. Not because I was afraid, because I understood something. She remembered me too. We didn't see her that day, but something in me shifted. For the first time since that night, I hoped she was alive. That sounds insane, I know. She nearly killed me. But she also changed me. I wasn't just prey to her. I was something she saw and didn't destroy. There's meaning in that. Some animals don't kill out of hunger. Sometimes they test us. Sometimes they offer a kind of mercy. And that mercy isn't weakness, it's power held back. I would carry that lesson for the rest of my life. A year after the attack, I returned to the exact spot. Same ridge, Same curve of trees. I brought no tent, just a sleeping pad, a fire starter, and a photograph of my mother folded into my jacket. I lay there under the stars, shaking but determined. I had to face it. Not her. Me. I built a small fire, placed a strip of meat near the edge of the clearing, and sat in silence. Hours passed, cold crept in. The meat remained untouched, but I didn't feel alone. I felt seen, not threatened, witnessed. I closed my eyes around 2 a.m. and woke just before sunrise. The meat was gone. No prints, no sign, just gone. Maybe it was a fox, maybe it was her. But I knew better. I felt it. In the stillness. In the way the wind paused for just a second. Something had come and chosen to leave me be. Just like before. I placed a stone on the log where I'd almost died. A small token. Not of fear. Of reverence for her for that night. For the piece of me I left there. Back home I started carving again. I used to whittle small animal figures when I was a boy. Birds, deer, bears. But now I carved cougars. Dozens of them, each with different expressions, snarling, stalking, sleeping. I didn't know why at first, but it made me feel close to her. Not the animal exactly. The presence, the lesson, the truth of what she represented. I gave some away, kept one by my bedside. I still look at it before I sleep. People sometimes ask if I'd ever want to see her again. Face to face, no tent, no chaos, just us. I tell them yes, every time, because I owe her something. Not for sparing me, but for showing me who I am when everything else is stripped away. She didn't just walk into my tent. She opened a door I'd kept closed for too long. And through that door, I found the part of myself that doesn't need noise or armor to survive. Just breath, stillness, and the memory of eyes that saw me and let me go. I no longer dream of the attack, I dream of the forest, of lying beside her again. Not in terror, but in peace. She breathes. I breathe, and nothing has to be said. I don't think survival is about winning. I think it's about being chosen to continue, and living in a way that honors that choice. I don't walk ahead of the wild anymore. I walk with it, listening, learning, grateful. Always. That day the mountain didn't just give me scars. It gave me silence from the kind that speaks. It didn't take my life, it gave me a second one. And every time I feel afraid, I close my eyes and remember, the cougar was real. But so was the mercy.